June 28, 1983, 1:30 in the morning. A 100-foot section of Interstate 95 in Greenwich, Connecticut, tears loose and drops 70 feet into the Mianus River. 2 tractor-trailers and a car go down with it. 3 people are killed. The bridge was 25 years old. It had passed a state inspection 9 months earlier. What killed it wasn't a design flaw, and it wasn't a freak load. It was water. A road crew had blocked the bridge's drains a decade before and never came back to unblock them. Rainwater sat against the steel season after season until the bearings holding that section of deck rusted through from the inside. At the other end of that same interstate, in the same state, stands a bridge 15 years older. Engineers have found the same enemy inside it. The Gold Star Memorial Bridge carries Interstate 95 and US Route 1 across the Thames River between New London and Groton, Connecticut. It's the largest bridge structure in the state, more than 1 million square feet of deck, 6,000 feet long, standing about 135 feet of clearance above the water. More than 120,000 vehicles cross it every day. The northbound span, the original, opened in 1943, is now rated in poor condition. Oversized and overweight trucks have been banned from it for over a decade, forced into detours that add miles to every haul through this corridor. Fixing it will cost $900 million. Nearly $1 billion for a bridge most people have never thought twice about crossing. To understand why doing nothing was never an option, you need to understand what this crossing actually carries. And it's not just commuters. Groton, Connecticut does not look like a place that matters to the global balance of power. It's a town of fewer than 40,000 people on the eastern bank of the Thames. Nothing about it signals national significance, until you look at what's built along its waterline. Naval Submarine Base New London sits in Groton. It's the Navy's first submarine base, and it is still the home of the American Submarine Force, home port to roughly 15 attack submarines. On the same stretch of waterfront, General Dynamics Electric Boat runs its principal construction yard. Electric Boat and Huntington Ingalls in Newport News, Virginia, are the only 2 shipyards in the United States capable of building nuclear-powered submarines. There are no others. Right now, the yards in Groton are building 2 classes at once: Virginia-class attack submarines, the backbone of America's undersea strike capability, and alongside them, the Columbia-class, the Navy's highest priority shipbuilding program, the boats that will carry roughly 70% of the nation's deployed nuclear warheads, replacing the aging Ohio class into the 2080s. The 3rd Columbia boat has been named USS Groton, after the town that built it, on the far side of this bridge. And directly beside the bridge's western approach in New London sits the United States Coast Guard Academy. Every worker who builds those submarines, every component that supplies those yards, every military vehicle moving through this corridor, all of it crosses the Gold Star Memorial Bridge. When Governor Ned Lamont made the case for rebuilding it, he put it plainly. His hunch, he said, was that the hundreds of drivers on the bridge at any given moment were heading to the Naval Submarine Base, and thousands more to Electric Boat. That is what makes this crossing critical in a way that has nothing to do with commute times. It's the land artery for the town that builds America's nuclear submarines. And right now, that artery is being rebuilt from the inside out.
Before the bridge, traffic crossed the Thames on a 50-year-old railroad bridge that had to swing open for every passing ship.
Workable in peacetime, and completely inadequate the moment the United States entered a world war and the Navy needed uninterrupted access to the submarine yards rising on the Groton waterfront. Construction began in 1941 under wartime steel shortages, with material being pulled in every direction at once. The bridge opened in 1943, a single Warren deck truss span carrying traffic in both directions. 6,000 feet of steel across the river, standing high enough that submarines and naval vessels could pass underneath without interruption. In 1951, it received the name it carries today, the Gold Star Memorial Bridge, honouring service members from Groton, New London and Waterford who lost their lives in the First World War, the Second, and Korea. Then the post-war boom arrived, and one span couldn't absorb it. A second parallel span opened on June 13, 1973, a date plenty of people in southeastern Connecticut still remember driving across. The original span then closed for its own reconstruction, reopening in 1975, carrying northbound traffic only. That is the configuration that still stands today. The 1943 original carries northbound I-95, the 1973 span carries southbound. Together, they formed the largest bridge structure in Connecticut, spanning the river, the rail lines beneath it, and the local roads below. By 2026, that original northbound span was 83 years old, built during a world war, never designed for what it would eventually be asked to carry, and long overdue for a reckoning. The threat working on the Gold Star is the same enemy that took down the Myanus: corrosion, trapped water, and time, attacking the same class of component. But the two bridges are not the same machine, and the difference matters. The Myanus was built on a pin and hanger design, a handful of joints carrying the deck, each one fracture-critical and non-redundant. When those pins corroded, there was nothing underneath to catch the load. The Gold Star is a Warren deck truss, thousands of interconnected steel members, each one carrying part of the structure. It's a fundamentally different way of holding up a bridge. What it is not is immune. Road salt goes down across I-95 every winter, works into the joints and bearing assemblies, and stays there. Over 83 winters, that is an enormous cumulative load of corrosive material in sustained contact with the steel. And the Gold Star has a second problem the Myanus never had. The Thames is an estuary, open to Long Island Sound. Salt air moves across this bridge's steel every day of the year in every season. Coastal exposure engineers treat as a distinct and accelerating threat on top of everything else. The other thing the Myanus exposed was how little of this anyone was actually looking at. In 1983, Connecticut had 12 engineers assigned to inspect 3,425 bridges. Hidden, hard-to-reach components, bearings, pins, the inside of a joint, were effectively impossible to examine closely. Nobody caught what was happening inside the Myanus until it was already in the river. Which is what makes 2014 on the Gold Star worth paying attention to. That year, engineers found failing bearings on the northbound span and performed an emergency replacement. Bearings, the same class of component whose corrosion sent the Myanus down 31 years earlier. This time, they caught it. But an emergency replacement treats a symptom, and the broader decline of the deck and superstructure kept going. And the deck is its own story. The surface carrying traffic across that 1943 bridge today isn't from 1943. It's from the reconstruction of the mid-1970s, which makes the deck about 55 years old, riding on a structure that's 83. Two different clocks running on the same bridge. Both of them have now run out. Then, on April 21, 2023, the corridor showed exactly how fast it could be paralyzed. Just after 11 in the morning, a car blew a tire and came to a stop on the southbound span. A tanker truck carrying home heating oil struck it from behind, rolled over, and caught fire. Roughly 2,200 gallons of oil spilled across the deck, and some of it poured down through the bridge and into the Thames below. Black smoke rose hundreds of feet over the river. The tanker's driver, Wallace Fouquet III, 42 years old, of Stonington, was killed at the scene. I-95 was closed in both directions while the fire burned. The northbound side reopened first. The southbound span stayed shut for hours while engineers checked its steel for heat damage, because a fire of that intensity can compromise a bridge, and nobody was reopening it until that question had a definitive answer. And that was the newer span, the one in better condition. It still took down the entire corridor. The northbound span carries about 60,000 vehicles a day. Its deck and superstructure are rated in poor condition, and oversized trucks, what the state calls permanent vehicles, have been banned from it for over a decade because the structure can no longer safely carry them. Every day those trucks take the long way round is a measurable cost. Not a catastrophe, but a slow, compounding loss that lands on everyone who depends on this crossing. Here is how bad it has actually gotten. According to the Department of Transportation's own explanation of the project, the northbound Gold Star cannot support the weight of its own repair. It cannot carry construction equipment and materials and 5 lanes of traffic at the same time. And because of the height of the structure, crews can't work from the ground. The work has to be done from the bridge deck itself. So, before they could fix the bridge, they had to get the traffic off it. That's the crossover. On May 30th, 2026, the 5 southbound lanes were cut down to 3, and 2 northbound lanes were established behind a steel barrier on the southbound structure. The southbound span could take it. It's the newer bridge, and it has already been strengthened. Speed limits dropped to 45 miles an hour in both directions, enforced by state police and speed cameras. That leaves the old northbound bridge running just 2 open lanes with no shoulders, which, as the project's resident engineer put it, means a single crash could shut down the entire northbound bridge. Only then does the real work start. The deck comes out, all 500,000 square feet of it, and goes back as a deck that is lighter but stronger, designed, in the project engineer's words, to act compositely with the truss below, so the deck itself helps carry the load. It's done in 2 stages. The outer sections first, then the center. Structural steel gets strengthened and repaired through the girder spans. Selected bearings are replaced on both the girder and truss spans. Bearings again, the same component that failed at Mayanes and needed emergency attention here in 2014. The deck joints get replaced. The seams where water works its way through to the steel underneath. That is the direct answer to what killed the Mayanes. New barriers, new fencing, new lighting, new overhead signs, and a full repaint of the entire superstructure. And the target isn't perfection. The state's own stated goal is to bring the bridge back up to a condition rating of satisfactory and to restore the load capacity so that permit vehicles can cross again. On the southbound side, the steel strengthening is already done. A separate project, still in design, would widen that span's existing sidewalk into a full shared-use path for cyclists and pedestrians across the river. So why does this add up to $900 million? Because it isn't one project. The $900 million is a program. The northbound rehabilitation alone, the contract awarded to MSR Gold Star Bridge Partners in October 2025, is $721 million. The rest covers the steel strengthening on both spans and the pedestrian work still on the drawing board. And every dollar of it has to be spent above an active river, live rail lines, and an interstate that cannot be closed. The funding is 90% federal, 10% state, anchored by a $158.2 million grant from the Federal Bridge Investment Program. About 200 union workers are on the job under terms that prioritize Connecticut labor. Construction began in early 2026. It will be finished in the fall of 2030. $900 million buys the Gold Star decades of extended service life. It does not buy permanence. No project of this kind ever does. A bridge this old, carrying this much traffic in this marine environment, will face this question again. What the money actually buys is the time to answer it properly, before the river answers it instead. Mayanes was 25 years old. This one is 83. The difference between those 2 stories isn't the severity of the corrosion. It's that this time, somebody found it first. And that's the part worth sitting with. There are more than 41,000 bridges in the United States currently rated in poor condition, the classification that used to be called structurally deficient, and the overwhelming majority of the people driving across them every day have no idea. The Gold Star is one of the rare ones where the inspection caught it, the funding came through, the plan exists, and the work has already started. Most aging bridges in this country are not that fortunate. They caught this one in time. So here's the question I'll leave with you. Which one's next? Which bridge in your state, on your commute, the one you've been driving over for years and quietly wondering about, do you think needs this before it needs something worse? Name it in the comments. I'll read them, and there's a decent chance one of them ends up being the next video. And if you like it, subscribe for more Mega Build stories. Thanks for watching.